A lot of the area we're going to be drilling into today is in what we term as human augmentation, which is all about how do we support functions intelligently, how do we leverage intelligent digital associates to augment human operations across the business lines like HR, finance, marketing, supply chain, IT, etc. So this is a lot more about breaking down barriers, wrapping the needs of the customer into the way that employees are incentivized, in the way that business outcomes are measured, to have a more inclusive digital mindset, to have the customer impact really involved in every process chain in the company. So we're looking at a customer to cash mindset rather than procure to cash, and an invoice, and not so much looking at invoicing, but looking at how the customer to cash process operates as well as we get into this. How do we unify outcomes? How do we flatten structures? How do we really insert things like design thinking into our processes so we can use them to drive experiences that are going to get us ahead of the market, give us an edge over our competitors, make us more anticipatory as an organization? Because the third leg of what we look at in the One Office organization is around insights. It's about becoming more predictive, becoming more smart and cognitive, and leveraging deep learning to be more anticipatory. So understanding what our customers are going to do before they know it themselves. How do we leverage emerging technologies in machine learning and blockchain as well to be more effective as we look at the experiences that we're creating in today's society, in today's businesses? And we have to think about the real fundamental principle here is business operations and customer experiences need to be designed in partnership between the business and technology parts of the business to achieve unified outcomes. And you've got to have an engaging experience for customers, employees, and partners. This takes us to where we're going today in a hyper-connected enterprise. We can look over the last sort of 3-4 decades where we've looked at things like shared services and offshoring, the outsourcing boom around the 2005 to 10 era. Then we looked at what happened after the Great Recession of 2008 and the onset of what we term as basic digital, which is how do we respond to our customer needs as those needs occur? How do we react quickly with online capability to today's world, which is all around the digital One Office and having that anticipatory capability? And what we're going to talk about today is a lot about where we're actually going in 2020 and beyond, where we look at these super intelligent digital workers. We look at companies becoming more autonomous with their supply chains, becoming more connected or hyper-connected with each other. But the reality is all we've been doing for the last 3 decades is pretty much the same things the same way, just a little bit faster, a little bit cheaper, maybe a little bit more effective. We've reached this point where we've really run out of wiggle room. And if we truly want to become an effective, interactive, hyper-connected business, we have to look at the fundamental way that our processes are driving customer and employee experiences. It means we actually have to change the way we are designing institutional processes to really take advantage of emerging technologies to do that. And we've really reached that point today. And just to give you an example of how fast things are changing, we took some data here that looks at outsourcing relationships and what's happening upon expiry of these deals. So this is looking at those global leaders within the Global 2000, the operations leaders. And you can see here that 23% are going to stay with their current partner. 26% have already thought, you know, we'll stay with our current partner, but only if they're going to assure us of having more outcome focus and increased automation in our relationships. 31% are already looking to maybe change their outsourcing partner because they've lost confidence that they're going to deliver anything new and innovative to the table. And then we get to 20% have actually said, we're pretty much fed up with the way we're doing things using external parties, and we're going to bring this in-house. We're actually going to insource this and rebuild this ourselves. And a lot of what's going on today is companies figuring out we can't keep doing things the same way, using the same vehicles in these same tired old models that don't work. The partners that got us here might not be the ones who are going to take us where we really want to go as a business. And we can see it's a bit like, you know, are we going to go and buy a Tesla, or are we going to stay with a hybrid or a gas guzzler? We have to make some choices in this world. So I just wanted to leave you with a couple of other bits and pieces around what people are looking for help with getting into this digital mindset and digital environment. And a lot of this is around what are they externalizing today. So people are looking for help in complex technical areas. So they want help with AI, with cognitive, with machine learning and hyper-personalization, process automation and robotics. Most clients today can't go out and just hire armies of highly expensive trained technical talent to do this for them. So they're relying on smart partners to get them to this place. Where companies are focusing more internally is a lot around strategic data governance. So whether you're a CIO or a CMO or a CFO, you're really a data manager today. Your job is to manage a lot of unstructured, complex data to improve customer experiences, to create a more touchless virtual operating environment, to have much more real-time data that supports decision-making and make you more anticipatory as a business. So a lot of this is around designing solutions that can really help customers manage data more effectively, help them with the complexity to really do more. And only 22% of organizations today, as you can see, have actually structured more than half their data. So we're operating in a world of very unstructured information, customers really struggling on how to do this more effectively and having access to the right technology to help them do this. But a lot of money is piling in. This is a huge study we've run recently that looks at 30% of major enterprises are now spending $50 million a year on average on intelligent automation technologies. So the money's being put in, the focus is there, the attention's there, but now it's about getting to that next stage, which is one of the big things that we really want to talk about today. And I'll leave you with a lovely quote I picked off yesterday, which I couldn't help sharing with you all. So I'm going to hand off to Melissa, if you can briefly introduce yourself to talk a bit about what are digital associates and how can they become a big part of this one office experience.
Great, happy to. Thanks, Phil. Hi, everybody. This is Melissa O'Brien. I am Research VP here at HFS, and I lead our research around digital associates, which is the topic of our chat today, and also look at various elements of customer experience and our one office paradigm, as Phil outlined for us. So today we're excited to share with you some of our research that we've recently done into digital associates and how they're sort of becoming and can become part of the fabric of that one office experience. That's an aspirational and sort of experiential journey for a lot of folks. So let's just start off with, first of all, what are we talking about? What are digital associates? And some of the easiest way, I think, to start to describe this is to talk about what they're not. So we've got this sort of spectrum of automation tools here on this graphic. And, what we're not talking about is desktop automation, RPA, and even as we get into more quote unquote conversational tools, we're not talking about chatbots that ping back canned responses like our typical IVRs that we're so used to getting stuck in, IVR jail. Chatbots are kind of the text form of that. And we're not talking about virtual assistants, which we're all getting really used to using in our consumer lives, in our home lives, and every day. We're talking about a step beyond that for a few reasons in terms of capabilities, as well as in terms of uses. And one of the big things that we talk about when we're getting into the far right of the spectrum here around digital associates is around the capabilities of learning. So using elements of machine learning, of NLP, of neural networks, perhaps around some image recognition and things of that nature. But also more importantly, we're talking about being able to use context. We're talking about being able to use, to be focused on business outcomes and often around really domain specific use cases. So this is quite across the enterprise, not necessarily talking about what we tend to think of, which is kind of your end customer, consumer facing conversational bots. So in a nutshell, that's what we're talking about with digital associates. And, so for a couple of examples of that, we've seen digital associates being used in the IT help desk as sort of a support hub to bypass a traditional IVR or form-based mechanism, even in supply chain management for order tracking, a procurement assistant that can help give more visibility into what's happening in a supply chain, or an HR onboarding for kind of automated provisioning of equipment, maybe new hire requests, things of that nature. And as well, we can use it in the front office with our end customers or to help augment and assist our agents that are speaking with our end customers, which some of our panelists are going to get into quite a bit today, and we'll go into a bit more detail. But for now, let's move on to the next slide and talk about the principles. And this is kind of a big piece of what we learned in our research around kind of the business impacts. And when we talk about automation, a lot of times the conversation is focused around efficiencies and around cost savings. And that can definitely be a factor. But it's still was saying, you know, we're not just talking anymore about making things faster and cheaper and a little bit more efficient. We're actually talking about changing the dynamics within our organization to help create this sort of one office paradigm where we're more intelligent, we're more responsive, we're more proactive, both to our customers' needs as well as to our own internal needs. So some of the things that we learned in the discussions that we had with a lot of customers that are using digital associates of various forms were around using them to empower employees. So this is quite a big piece because we're kind of bullish on the thought that while digital associates can have the capabilities to replace a task or even in times replace roles, they're also really helping us augment and get better at our jobs. So how are we using some of these tools to be able to provide better customer service by letting people do their jobs better, by empowering them? And Gautam with AAA will have a lot to chat about with us on that topic. Also around sort of the training of digital associates is that we have to kind of view this as they are more intelligent workers. We need to view this as kind of a training. We're not just programming a bot to do canned responses like a chat bot or an RPA tool. We're really looking to help enable them for future use cases so that they can be malleable, so that they can be more responsive to whatever interactive task we're asking them to perform. Also, talking about kind of channel-less or touchless or seamless, you know, we as consumers, we're just coming to expect things to be solved the most efficient way possible. We're looking for our problem to be solved. You know, we're looking for our question to be answered. So how can we design these things to help achieve that end? And this is also a big piece around smart design tactics. I think what this really gets to the heart of is around human-centric design. So thinking about the way that the human brain works when you're designing these things, the way that we communicate with one another, and then also being able to leverage digital associates for security, which for some of the customers we spoke with was kind of a nice to have add-on, like, oh, this helped and we didn't realize it was going to have that effect. But for many, it's a really sort of critical imperative to be able to use these tools to help increase their security and compliance. So with that, just a couple of examples on two of these things I wanted to share with you from the conversations that we had in the recent research. If we can move to the next slide. We had talked a bit about this kind of concept of touchless and seamless. And really, I think businesses kind of tend to take this focus around channels, you know, and categorizing communication. And really people, we don't think in terms of channels. We just think, let's get our issue resolved. You know, whatever mode of communication is easiest for me at that moment, if it's my phone or my desktop or my tablet, whatever it may be. So one of the examples that we came across was around a tech support provider that was able to create an app, which ended up being a support hub to initiate help requests for their employees and actually for their customers of the help desk business. And so this kind of bypassed the traditional IVR and bypassed some of the form-based tools that they had in order to help folks just get their issues and questions and answers resolved more easily. And the result that they saw from this was 32% deflection from the service desk, which is helpful in terms of efficiency, of course, and that helps in terms of cost savings. But most importantly, from an end user or customer satisfaction standpoint, to just have one spot that they can just go to regardless of what device they're using, and just be able to help to help get those things resolved faster and quicker, and they expect those numbers to go up. The other point that I wanted to touch upon in the next example was around driving compliance and security. And this particular use case was around, it was actually for a healthcare organization, and they're deploying the digital associate across various parts of their organization. But one of the big things that they took away from using the tool as an interaction was to be able to mitigate some of the human error that happens, in particular around a company that has so many compliance and regulations rules that's getting audited. If there's human error, or if there's a lot of time that sort of lag between requests and things actually getting provisioned, it causes issues, and it creates security risks and potentially breaches. So when you have a digital associate that's programmed to be able to not just kind of meet those requests, but also make sure that, for example, people aren't getting permissions that they're not supposed to get, things like that, it actually really helps improve the security and the compliance within the organization, which is probably the most compelling part of the story on top of the efficiencies piece. So those are just a couple that I wanted to highlight from our research, but we have two folks on the call today who were actually really instrumental in helping us come up with these principles. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to turn over to those guys. We have Rob and Gautam on the line. So if we can move on to the next slide, but also Rob, I'll start with you. Would you please introduce yourself and let us know what you've been doing with digital associates at TD Bank?
Sure thing. My name is Rob Skaljan. I'm leading the conversational AI development team with TD Bank. I've been actually in this role for a couple of years now. One of the things is that we've been looking at a lot of different vendors in this space, trying to kind of understand a little bit more around how these conversational AI platforms work and what sort of the differences are between those different platforms.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for joining us. And Gautam?
Hi, everyone. This is Gautam Nelutla. I'm the Chief Architect and responsible for selecting the right technology solutions for our organizations at AAA of Southern California. So what we are looking for is, while we are embarking on this digital transformation journey and looking at opportunities for re-engineering our applications, our business processes, and automating or eliminating them, we are also looking at where there are emerging technologies that we can embed right into our ecosystem or the fabric, like Melissa was mentioning, so that we can take advantage of them, leapfrog into it, and take advantage of the research that has been going on and the solutions that are already ready. And we felt in this digital transformation, employees' engagement and employee experience is a core pillar. And we strive to provide legendary service at a AAA, and with happy employees comes the legendary service. That's what we realized.
Awesome. Thank you, Gautam. And so just a quick reminder to the audience listening in on the webinar that you can submit questions in the Zoom console. So please feel free to do that, and we'll get to as many as we can throughout the conversation. But for now, I know Phil has a lot of questions, so I'm going to pass it off to him to dive in with Rob and Gautam.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. And we are getting some questions coming in, so I'll get to those shortly. Robert, as you've been assessing these different tools in the markets for quite a while, what have been your observations about the capabilities you've seen in the market, especially, they've matured a bit, but what's your take on where they are today versus all the hype we've had and where they're going?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there are a lot of vendors in this space. I think, some of the other research I've done, I think there's some folks are counting about 1,600 vendors in this space. And we've been kind of struggling with how to differentiate between all the different vendors, and what's going to give us sort of the things that we want to achieve in terms of a great customer employee experience. And we've also looked at the different types of use cases. Earlier things were mentioned. Obviously chatbots can do simple things like FAQs, but where the bigger bang for the buck is going to be around, self-serve and advice type business use cases. When we started looking under the hood, and again, with a lot of these vendor presentations, it almost came across a bit of like a Terminator 2 Skynet type technology out there, was sort of the impression that a lot of folks had. And when we started digging a little bit deeper, we kind of broke it out into sort of 5 different categories. We wanted to look at, first of all, what we would call on the conversational AI platform, the brain capability or the NLP, NLU strength, So how strong is that brain, and how does it, how much effort do I actually have to put into training the bot? We've found that there's definitely differences across the different vendor platforms. Some require a lot more training on from a human perspective to put into to get a certain level of ability of an utterance to map to an intent. The other thing we looked at was from a tool set perspective. So yes, we want something that's a little bit less effort to train, but if we do want to train it on, let's say, particularly specific topics related to our organization, we want tool sets that will allow us to do that, and tool sets that don't require you to necessarily be a data scientist or a strong technical developer. And we've done use cases where we've actually had folks that were working on call centers on the phones that have actually now been able to learn a tool set on particular platforms so that they can actually train and build out dialogue flows on, by themselves. The other thing we've looked at is, how do we integrate this into our environment? How do we connect into our back-end systems? Obviously, TD Bank, being a bank, customers' information is very important, and security and privacy and all that sort of stuff. So how do these platforms integrate? What type of deployment options are out there? Can we deploy them on-prem? Can we go into a cloud? Do we feel comfortable with that cloud configuration as well? The fourth area was around vendor strength and where are these vendors going in the future. So, and how are they looking at the next steps in AI? And like I mentioned earlier, what are they doing in terms of making their NLP stronger? Are there new ways of thinking? So there are other topics like AI-powered search and smart document understanding that can also be leveraged with chatbots. So are those vendors exploring those types of spaces? And then the last one was obviously cost. And we saw a big difference across the vendors in terms of how much a conversation would cost. So everything from pennies a conversation to upwards over $1. Again, still cheaper than, let's say, a call into a call center that we would pay there, which would be multiple dollars or over $10. But again, if we could get it down to pennies, cost would be a great thing too.
Okay, so how do you decide where to start? Which types of interactions you want to target, Robert?
So how do we decide that? So where we've kind of been on our journey, our first use case was we actually released a chatbot out for our mobile app. So we wanted to give, first of all, a customer experience. We have also been able to, let's say, aggregate our data. So one of the things we did a couple of years ago was we introduced a product called TD MySpend, which aggregates your transactions and categorizes them. So it's a little bit of like a Fitbit for finance. And so if I want to know, for example, how much did I spend at Starbucks last month, we can provide that information. And what we did was, through our mobile app, we actually put a chatbot experience in front of that. So that was kind of one area that was the first use case that we rolled out to our customers. The other areas that we've been looking at has been around, are there things around assisting our agents where we can do call deflection. So again, where, for example, on our branch side of things, our internet search is not the greatest, and people struggle to find policies and information. And even when they do want an expert to make sure that they've got the right information, so they tend to call the call center. So we've also built chatbot capabilities that can help people, you know, ask the chatbot. And in that case, we actually saw, you know, we covered off about the top 50% reasons why people call into the call center were actually built into the chatbot. So an opportunity to have some call deflection. And then we've also leveraged use cases around IT help desk support as well, and you know, helping people walk through, you know, common setup activities, and that has been a real plus to employees. When I tend to go around to some of the other business areas, it's also been a bit of a selling point, because people during the bank have actually referenced that when they start, and it's helped walk through and helps them familiarize with some of the, you know, IT support type needs that they have.
Interesting, and I'll get to you, Mark, in a minute. But a lot of questions for Robert coming in online. So one of them's around the types of interactions that your customers are having. So you've mentioned you're trying to pull them into the chat facility versus getting them to call you up. Do you have data now on like success rates on how many calls that you've actually dealt with digitally now that have been successful versus them still resorting to calling you guys up? Have you got to that point, or are you still sort of feeling your way on getting that sort of quantifiable element?
So on the customer side, some of the metrics that we've been tracking is obviously the number of registered users that we have, but also the number of active users. So we're trying to get some numbers on to see, you know, how frequently are people using the bot. We're looking up at metrics like accuracy. Are we mapping to the intent? The other good thing is that it's also giving us insights into what are the things that people are asking that we haven't thought about as well. So that's also helping us prioritize things there. So that's sort of on the customer side. The other side, on the employee side, we're still kind of trying to gather some of those metrics. We've done some proof of concepts and some small internal pilots there. So hoping once we release those out to the broader base, we'll be able to compare that back to our business case.
Thank you very much, Robert. That's very helpful. You've shared a lot already, so we really appreciate that. Gautam, you've been talking a bit about the Whisper tool that you've been developing. What do you feel has been the response and feedback from your agents using this? Have there been any surprises?
Yeah, so as I agree totally with Robert, what he has been saying, how to pick those and how they're seeing the response. So we see the same, where we started a small pilot that was low risk and high impact, but we also picked a very complex use case because we want to ensure that the technology sustains for a complexity. And so the agents, when we deployed a couple of the use cases, we rolled out, and it was accuracy was one of the factors that we are seeing where they liked it. And also it tremendously reduced the amount of time from where without this Whisper agent, they were taking at least 97%, 95% of the time was reduced. And the speed at which the assistant was able to aggregate most of the information and present the responses was fabulous. And so we were measuring the accuracy of that intent and the handle time. And along with that, as Robert has mentioned, that the usage factors. But also the other thing that we are seeing is the dialogue flows, how easy it is, intuitive it is for the business users and the operations SMEs to design them so that we can test, train them in advance, so that there is a little bit of technical involvement or knowledge awareness needed. So that is what another thing where we are also looking at. And we are also prepared that this technology will eventually evolve, and we may be prepared for change. And then we are also following up on some additional use cases and roll out to broader call center users too.
Thank you for that. And one area that I spoke about a bit with Robert, but it'd be good if you could chip in here as well, Gautam, is how do you measure success with these digital associates you're investing in? You know, how would you turn around at the end of the year and say, we're really getting some value from this. We've achieved X number of hours back to the business or X numbers of dollars saved. I mean, how are you thinking of doing that?
So from at least from the AAA of Southern California standpoint, as I said, our goal is still to empower our employees and to reduce the attrition rate in the call centers and also provide better experience for the employees that are in the service line for these members and customers. So the way that we were measuring is the handle time that it was taking, the information that they were able to find quickly so that they're not frustrated, and focusing on the interactions with these customers, and the accuracy of this one, and also the adoption rate within the call centers, where how these agents are, how often they're using this for those use cases, and also requesting for additional use cases. So we are measuring this comprehensively from multiple dimensions, not just as handle time or reduction of our call center agents. This has nothing to do with that one. It is not about reducing the staff. So it is about employee engagement and also measuring the customer experience. And we're also looking at for the questions or the things that the customers have requested, have they been repeated through any other channels, and is that one and done too? So that's another dimension that we are measuring.
Gautam, you mentioned something interesting that I'd like to ask a question on the intent of the point that you mentioned, and the tool's ability to detect the intent. Could you tell us how that works, or how you're able to, how does that help your agent? Is it just prompting them before, like, hey, this is what you need to deal with on the call, or maybe just give us some more flavor on that?
So it's a combination of, since Auto Club services in multiple business domains. We are emergency roadside service, travel business, insurance business, and membership business. When somebody calls about why my bill went up in one of the areas, they want to clearly understand whether they're talking about membership or insurance or their travel bill. And also, they need to know where is it an existing member or is it a customer, and that intent can be built into when you come into especially the insurance domain. It's even much critical. Where are you talking about a claim? Are you talking about your premium increase? Or you are talking about a bill that was paid but not reflected in your paper bill that you have received? So some things like that one, and that's where. And also it is the operations and the business needs, where when they are training the agent and when they are designing this one, they were putting in multiple combinations of a natural language kind of just a conversation, regular conversation that they would have, and they could ask multiple questions in that one, or just a simple question, so that then it is interactive and then asks and quizzes you for more, so that until you identify the real intent. So that's what we liked about some of these things. And so that eventually, once we have enough data, we want to also see how it would learn and make some recommendations around that.
Awesome. Thank you.
There's a good question that's come in, a couple of them actually, around getting engagement and enthusiasm from folks internally working with digital associates. Maybe, Robert, you could start with this one, but can you share a bit about what's working and maybe what hasn't worked so much in terms of getting your staff learning how to use these effectively, getting them excited about it, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's definitely doing, like, part of ourselves getting educated has also been going out and educating the different lines of businesses that we have across the bank. So lots of ideas for folks that, run use cases, and T, covers everything from banking, wealth to insurance, both, in Canada, US, and as well around the world. So lots of use cases out there. So we've done things like getting people to participate in bot bashes. So when we've done a proof of concept and we want to do some additional training, we've actually, reached out to other folks in our employee base to participate in taking an hour and bashing the bot. So this has actually given them a chance to kind of experience, where, what the effort is in terms of training it, and and as well what the possibilities are. And we've also gotten great feedback, and also exposing it to people who are maybe not necessarily experts on what that bot's domain of intelligence has been trained on. Also give you different insights on how people may ask questions that you hadn't anticipated, where subject matter experts might be a little bit more, because they've been in that, they've got a little bit of blinders on in terms of how they would ask the questions. So it's been great exposing that to other people. We've also done things like around running summits, and we've had both business partners and technology partners and vendors come in and talk about all aspects around, how do you design bots, how do you develop bots. One thing we've definitely found is there's a different way of thinking when you build bots, and how you kind of plan out what your conversations are and your dialogue flows. So it's definitely some new roles and again, new ways of thinking. The other thing we've been doing is we're doing roadmap building. So we're looking at with the different lines of businesses, what are the different types of use cases that they're interested in doing, and helping them to understand what a roadmap would be to achieve those capabilities that they want to do and use cases they want to tackle. And then the other thing that we've been talking about too is sort of a multi-bot ecosystem. So if we get to a point where we do have multiple bots out there, we've been educating people on, how do we make sure that we don't duplicate knowledge across the organization, and how can we, through some kind of an orchestration, manage allowing, different lines of businesses to access the same information. And in some cases where we've trained up stuff on employee content, is that something also we could expose to our customers as well. So again, been doing a lot of things around bot bashes, summits, and roadmap into building exercises with our various business partners.
Rob, you've been doing so much of this education internally, it sounds like, and just really kind of getting up to speed and making sure people are educated and understand. Is there also any kind of, thinking sort of externally from a talent recruitment standpoint, just thinking of this in terms of, from a lot of our surveys, we hear that folks are sometimes held back, concerned that, maybe we don't have the right folks on staff, or we need more of the right folks on staff to be able to help deliver these things in more scalable ways. So I'm just curious if you have any initiatives like that where you're trying to build a team and communicate this externally. Hey, we're a really forward-thinking organization around some of this stuff to try and attract the right folks.
Yeah, there is so my team is based out of Toronto, and there are local meetup groups that are out there with, that bring together a community of both developers and business folks to talk about those different ideas. So we've definitely been connecting out that way. The other way too is we have also done a bit of a Tech for Good partnership. There's a little startup called Ample Labs in Toronto. They actually built out a chatbot to help homeless individuals find access to meals and shelter and other assistance. So we've actually partnered with that. We've run some case competitions with TD folks. And again, people who are not necessarily chatbot developers, but we ran a bit of a case competition. We selected basically 18 employees that are now volunteering some of their time to work with that Tech for Good startup. So sort of our way to kind of get out into the community, give people a chance for themselves to learn how bot development works, and see, if this space or when this space does start to grow, we'll have access to some broader folks out there.
Thank you there.
Nice.
Good. So as you look out into the future, maybe Gotham, you could have a crack at this one. How much work do you think is going to be done by digital associate versus humans, based on the success and the challenges that you're facing today?
So from our standpoint, we are still heavily focused on call centers and brick and mortar branches. So we'll be spreading these as more as augmented and complementary to our employees. So we'll be adding more intents and more use cases across multiple lines of businesses. And like Robert has mentioned, we want to expose this to our customers too through our digital channels directly, so that it is self-served, but ensuring that there is that omni-channel experience so that they are getting same response and when they are calling us or visiting a branch or on the website. And we have a 2-year journey that we are planning on, but also one of the core components of this one is two of them actually, which is talent buildings, and we are following a 3-in-a-box approach where we will have our own internal talent being developed, and then we'll have the vendor partners, the software or the solution providers, and then any SI partners that we'll be partnering with. So we'll augment them. So it's a 3-in-a-box for talent management. And then, as I said, it will be a multi-vendor. We are prepared for that one. We are ensuring that whatever we build, the APIs or the knowledge that we build or the dialogue flows that we build, they could be easily transferred to any other new technology that we pick or the vendor solution that we pick.
So, yeah, I mean, the amount of hype we had in the industry around RPA, which was primarily around middle to back office processes and fixing or getting processes that aren't working very well, operating a bit better. Listening to both of you gentlemen today is just, it's just hitting home how much more value you're driving from the customer facing end of the business in what we call a human augmentation model. And it's fascinating how quickly this is evolving as we look at the future, and some markets that have actually failed versus some that are succeeding. And this really feels like it's got some genuine traction. I've been informed that we've been joined by a special guest who is the founder and CEO of IPsoft himself, Chetan Dubey. Are you there? Are we able to get you on? Probably grappling with his microphone and his mute button. If we can, maybe Andy, if you can see if you can get Chetan through, and we'll keep the conversation going. But I know he wanted just to say hello and have a few words as well. But I mean, back to you guys, Robert and Gotham. What's your sort of longer term plan with this as you get into this multi-bot environment and you start to think about how you want to engage in the future? Do you have like a longer term roadmap developing, or are you still just kind of trying to get operational and get this working today? Maybe Robert, do you want to think about that?
Sure. Yeah. So we definitely have put together sort of, when it comes to that multi-bot world, a viewpoint in terms of what types of business requirements we want to have. Some of the things we're kind of that we walk through is what's that type of experience that we want to give our customers. We obviously want it to be multi-channel, that omni experience. The other opportunity is that from a conversation perspective, if you have multiple bots out there, you can avoid duplication. You can also organize the way that you can manage your bots. So there's been some discussions around, do you have one big megabot? Do you have multiple bots? There are advantages, obviously, to organizing your bots by specific domains of intelligence. It allows you to maintain them in a much more easier fashion where you're not impacting the whole bot ecosystem. What's the type of customer experience do you want to have? Do we want to have a certain branding that the customer sees through the chat that's consistent regardless of what bot it's talking to on the back end? Or do you want to have a different type of persona where, if I ask an insurance question, you're handed off to more of an insurance type persona? So those are some of the things we're going through right now with respect to multi-bots.
Yeah, I agree with Robert. And as I said, on our end, we started off internally so that it is a low risk and it won't impact our brand if we did not do it the right way. But now that the technology is proven and the value is being realized for our employees, we want to pick some similar use cases or exactly a little bit different use cases that are low risk initially for our customer facing channels, direct self-serve channels. and then expand to more complex ones so that we can have our employees focus on more high-value service and sales items. And we do have a multi-vendor policy, as I said, and then a multi-year roadmap.
Yeah, one of the other user experience things too that to note, and again, talking sort of from a multi-channel perspective, you know, so if you've trained a bot on a specific area and you want to expose that to, you know, through your IVR, you know, and as well through your mobile, some of the other capabilities that you have to also consider around is the type of response you provide back. So depending on the channel, you may respond differently through a mobile app where you could provide like an image or a link versus how you'd respond in IVR. So that's sort of another user experience flow that we've been talking about as to how that would look.
Excellent. And I know you're both working with the Amelia product, which has been something we've done a lot of research on, particularly in support of this project. And I know there's been a lot of research that has gone into the neural part of that capability as well. Maybe Gautam, did you want to expand a bit upon your experiences with Amelia and some of the potential you think that has for you?
Yes, sure. We did explore a lot of other vendor solutions, but what we found with Amelia was the ease of use, and the business users allowed the way the dialogue flows, how easy it was to build their interactions and the intent identifications and the dialogue flows. And also it had multiple opportunities around on-prem, on the cloud, private cloud kind of deployment options. And security was of utmost importance to us, and that was handled pretty well, along with domain and industry experience, whereas I was saying Amelia brings in this wealth of knowledge in the insurance domain and also customer experience domain. So where we felt it was very easy to do business with them and also easy to integrate into our vast, complex, heterogeneous technology environments or platforms that we have.
I love that. Vast, heterogeneous technology platforms. I mean, we are living in a world of many terminologies, and how do we describe these things, right? And I think, you know, we need a bit more clarity as we move into the future. Robert, you've been very helpful with some of your thoughts and experiences. When you look at the Amelia product and the new version that you've been working on, I mean, what have you found have been the, you know, the positives and maybe even some of the challenges in really getting where you want to with it?
So definitely similar points to what was mentioned came out when we did our POC with Amelia. User tool set, you know, and like I mentioned earlier, very easy to use. Don't necessarily have to be hugely technical, but there are some aspects that you do have to have technical development, but I would say that also applies around some of the back-end integration points that you would have to do. So definitely some strengths there. Deployment options was also another bonus in the sense of the ability to you know, do on-prem, which had some security concerns around from a bank perspective. So that was an option as well as working with the team through the POC. Definitely industry expertise. They know what they're doing. So again, great experience with them.
And Melissa, you know, you've written a paper with me and some of the other analysts, and I think it's available on the IPsoft website, right? ipsoft.com. Is it on the homepage? You can easily find it. Yeah,
you should be able to get it on IPsoft. It's also available on HFS. It's same or similar title to what we've been talking about today on the webinar about propelling business operations forward using digital associates. And, you know, maybe if we can close out on kind of a key point and hear from our panelists, because I think it's an important distinction to make. You know, we kind of tend to clump things in automation together as bots, but as we were talking about in the, you know, what we're not talking about slides around how to define digital associates, it's some of the capabilities that go really above and beyond basic conversational tools, and basic kind of rules-based automation. So I was just wondering if you both would be willing to just chat a little bit about what some of the capabilities were that made you decide to do a POC with IPsoft and Amelia, and you know, how those have kind of made changes to your business operations, or how they've impacted them.
Yes, sure. This is Gautam. I can get started. Where, as we were discussing, some of the things that we felt that I think in one of the slides you showed too, where RPA versus other automation areas, and then the virtual assistants. Where we felt was we were taking for some of these interactions, if there was no Amelia, it would have taken us at least 30 to 45 minutes, because finding information across varied systems and which are structured and unstructured, and bringing them together and making sense out of them, and then prioritizing and presenting back to the customer, that has been really painful for our journey, painful experience for our employees, and in turn also to the customers. And what we felt was the combination of natural language understanding, conversational capability, the AI and the machine learning aspect of this one, we were able to quickly integrate all of these pieces, and we did not have to worry about them. This was almost like a black box to us, but all we had to do was build some APIs and then do our dialog flows and validate the intents. And that ease of use and quickly training that complex use case is what we felt that Amelia brought to the forefront, and we liked the technology capabilities in that, because there's so much hype around AI today. We don't know what is real AI, what is not real AI, and what is the knowledge that it is building in, because the key aspect of this one is also the contextual responses. And the surprising factor that we found was all we were looking for is a response to something, what might have the root cause. But what we felt was when there were multiple items that might have contributed to this one, how there is intelligence built into that to prioritize and also segregate the various factors that contributed to the change in our use case, that we felt was really useful, so that it helps our back office and our core business teams to focus on improving our processes or our services that we provide to the customers.
Adequately put. So when you talk to your senior management and leadership about what you're doing here, can you just share a bit about how this is articulated? Because as you said, there's so many different tools in the box, there's so many different technologies out there, that this must be very confusing at the senior level on what the business level unit leaders are doing to drive value, like for example with Amelia and other products like that. So do you describe this as a sort of an automation strategy, an AI strategy, a customer strategy? It'd be very, very interesting, maybe from both of you, as we finish up today's conversation, just to get a feel for how you communicate this up to the top and how they perceive it.
Sure. Yeah. So, from a TD Bank perspective, what we sort of did was with our business partners is we set up an exercise to go through defining sort of what a target operating model would look like for digital conversation. So as a part of that process, it was around educating sort of the capabilities around the bots, but also, you know, getting our business to articulate what they felt were their business requirements. And then what we did then, we sort of went multiple levels in terms of what they felt were the business requirements that they wanted to achieve from a digital conversations perspective. It was also looking at not just customers, but also employees and also call center assist. So we kind of covered off the whole organization. We then actually went through a step of, you know, articulating what would be the technical requirements to achieve those in terms of capabilities. And then the final step was around putting together some draft technology roadmaps. And then going forward, what we're basically trying to do is set up sort of a center of excellence to help support that, so that from a, let's say, across the bank perspective, we have a centralized kind of intake that comes into one area that helps make sure that we are looking to achieve those business requirements that we achieved or that we articulated during the target operating model exercise, and create some synergies across the organization, so people aren't sort of doing the same thing across different lines of businesses.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Just one other thing that we did was getting our basics right at the forefront, because we established a small educational slide deck, I would say, where what are bots, what are virtual assistants, what are conversational AI agents, and what is AI, what is machine learning, what is deep learning, and what is RPA, what is automation in general. So we established that cadence there, like, so that people clearly understand that we are not mixing the terms, and also not caught on with the hype of every vendor calling themselves as AI now. So.
Yeah, I personally like this digital workforce term, because it encompasses a lot more about what we're trying to do here in augmenting human capability with real digital worker capability. And it's something that I think is easier to communicate across the business as many different types of bots and things start to evolve. And so I think you've both been very eloquent at answering that. So I think one thing to sign off with is you've both obviously invested a lot of time in this. Do you feel this has been very beneficial to your career development? And is there any advice you can offer for fellow professionals in understanding more about digital associates and AI and automation? Maybe Gotham, you'd like to finish up with that?
Yeah, sure. Again, as I was just alluding to my earlier answer, where I was getting myself educated on this one and getting the clarity on what these things mean. And also now it helped me personally to know the distinction between various patterns and various solutions and various terminologies, and when to apply what. So apart from my career, I think it's personally, it would help me to distinguish so that I can talk with some data points and well educated and with real experience.
Thank you for that. And then finally, Robert, you have any?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very interesting journey for me the last couple of years, getting into this space, and I've obviously had a long career with the bank, and if I think about banking, I hate to say it, over 25 years ago to today, and the capabilities that we can offer our customers, our employees. This is a really great area to be in, and I think it's kind of a key in terms of that omni experience that has been mentioned a number of times today. So it's been a great opportunity to kind of learn more about this space and see where it's going, and take some of my previous experience and say, hey, how can we leverage this across the enterprise to really drive some great results?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Gotham from AAA, Robert from TD Bank. It's very nice to hear a Canadian accent today. I'm assuming you're a Raptors fan, right? Yeah, my brother-in-law is a huge Raptors fan, so he's...
yeah, definitely. It's been a good year for Toronto from a basketball standpoint, not so much from hockey perspective.
Good stuff. And thank you very much, Melissa, for leading the research and the time you spent today putting this all together. As I said, if you go to ipsoft.com, there's a copy of the paper available on digital associates, propel your business and move straight to digital. We also have it on the hfsresearch.com site. So download your copy, and we're going to reconvene again, I think, in the next few weeks with some more research and education around this. It's been great fun working with the IPsoft team and having you, Robert and Gotham, on the call as well. So thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody, for dialing in. There'll be a copy of this recording as well available on the HFS website. So with that, we'll love you and leave you. Have a great weekend. Hopefully we won't have such a depressing news cycle next week and can focus on more exciting things in the world. So thank you very much.